All right, you should be good to go, Mr. Chairman.
All set?
We are.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 24 July meeting of Planning and Zoning. Please stand, pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Noreen, can we please have the roll call?
Commissioner Clappy. Commissioner Fox.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Nathan.
Here.
Here.
Commissioner Woods.
Here.
Here. Commissioner Hoffman.
Chris.
Chris. Here.
Here.
Chris is online.
Yep.
So Commissioner Minor, request,
we're
we're getting some feedback on your mic, so just if you could mute, thank you very much, and just unmute. Unmute when you need to speak, thank you very much.
Since Commissioner Claffey's not here, I'd like to appoint Commissioner Droz. All right, thank you. Okay, next approval of the agenda, Mr. Planner.
No changes.
Okay, very good. Next will be participation by the public for a limit of 3 or 4 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak?
No one online has their hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Bill McCarthy's coming. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Bill McCarthy, 206 Churchill Drive. I like coming to these meetings just so I keep in the know of what's going on. I was at a conservation committee meeting last week, and they were talking about the bridge over the waterfall, and that there was some concern about cutting down some trees. Paul talked about cutting trees down yesterday at the town council meeting as part of a CROG proposal that we get an arborist. I think that's how we put it, to get involved with taking care of our forest here in the town of Newington. I live on Churchill Drive, so there was a big tree that came down during the last storm, wiped out our power for a little while. And that was probably a tree that should have been addressed as far as being diseased or old, or it could have just been a nice tree that came down. But I think that's a step in the right direction. So that's it as far as trees go. I think that some of the trees, the forests need to be addressed. I know people like trees, but some of the forest needs to be addressed. Couple other things. I like the fact that there's some properties going in on Lowry Place. One of the barber shops is moving over there. That's good, and the trampoline park is opening up. That's excellent. A couple of meetings ago, there was a proposal to get a zoning change next to Stop and Shop on Kitts Lane for an apartment / condominium / townhouse committee. And I don't know what the guy just withdrew his request, or where that one stood. Somebody in last month's meeting was talking about the other little Kitts Lane property behind the Citgo station, which is just sitting there barren, which is unfortunate. And then the big question is, I don't understand real estate very well, but Hartford Hospital put a piece of property up for sale. And then last I heard through the rumor mill that Hartford Hospital withdrew having the piece of property for sale. Like, I know about MLS listings for regular houses and stuff like that. But I understood that if you put a piece of property up for sale, then the property is up for sale. The other part of the rumor mill was that there's a committee or a subcommittee that's discussing what to do with the town plan altogether about what to do with that 50 acres, which I don't mind at all, but I think that it's to me, it's a little bit confusing that this is something that started and then now it's stopped. You know, Cedar Crest is a whole nother, up at the hospital is another story, but I got lots of questions and you guys got lots of answers. Oh, one other thing, Paul talked about the charging stations for new parking lots and stuff like that. I'm just wondering, does that mean that they get priority next to the building, like with handicap parking? And what happens if I decide that I want to park in one of those spots? Am I going to get a ticket for parking in a electric vehicle spot? So that's it. Thanks.
You want to address any of that on Mr. Planner?
Yep, so if the commission would like me to, that, yes,
Bill, you want to, Paul's going to address that.
yep, so there's a couple items in there. So what I would say is, so the Hartford Healthcare property, that's part, so there is going to be a town center economic development master plan study. That'll be done. We're working towards contract right now on that. And that is looking at the entire town center and that property as well. As we know, it is privately owned. The owner, as was noted, did remove it from the market, but that's primarily as we conduct our study, because right now it is zoned public land. So it is highly restrictive in its zoning on what can permit there. It primarily is the Hartford Hospital property. It could be a municipal type of property. It could be another large single entity that tends to work in the nonprofit type of area, but it can't be right now for housing or anything that's not associated with that use. You can't go and develop an apartment complex on that property now under the current zoning. So that study will look at potential zoning options for that property as well. And that will be brought through public participation process as part of that plan, charrettes, meetings. So that will be a large process the community will have an opportunity to be a good part of and an essential part of. So that's the Hartford Healthcare property and downtown. As far as I think of the last one, the charging stations, we talked about that tonight with the amendment too. There has been discussions among building officials and we've kind of looked at that. That's typically done at the building review when the plans come in. There are some minor regulations that out there to say you have to provide the accessible spaces. That yes, but that will be a building code discussion on when the plans are reviewed by the building official. And we would bring them in as part of the review process for those spaces and for ADA, typically through the town engineer and the building official is how those get looked at. And again, there is discussion right now in the building official community about that. So again, this is a newer state statute requiring this charging, and it's kind of evolving in the communities that have the requirements. And again, the requirements shall have the requirements. So the state has said, yes, you shall do this. But there is those back and forth on how it impacts building code, but that would be handled again by the building official during a review process.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, Bill? Thank you. Any other public want to participation? Nothing.
Nobody online, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, move to remarks by commissioners. Remarks by commissioners, okay. We don't have any public hearings, so we're gonna move to approval for the minutes. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second, move to second. Any discussion?
We should, for the July 10th, correct?
July 10th, I'm sorry, yes, July 10th. Any discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we're gonna go to new business, pre-application for 375 East Cedar Street.
Yep, so you'll see in your staff reports, again, we've been talking about the battery energy storage solutions for a meeting or two. That the applicant has come forward with a pre-application. Again, just to remind, the pre-application is non-binding on the commission. The applicant is coming here to present what they are looking to do on the property and looking for information from the commission. So either as they move forward with either a application to the TPZ, whether an amendment would be required for the use itself or for the location of the proposed use, or whether the TPZ makes the decision, makes the determination that this falls within a typical accessory structure. As I highlighted in the staff memo, the main issue on that is the question about accessory structures. If we consider an accessory structure, not just a utility, because we do have cases where transformers are located, again, in the front of the property by the right of way, but that's typical. That you have that they're sometimes on the corners of property, that they get developed out as part of the site plan. But this is a little larger than a typical transformer utility type of installation. So that's the kind of discussion of, is this an accessory structure? Staff typically would look at this, again, by its size as an accessory structure. We would look at a generator kind of the same way, and we would require it to not be in front of the building. This proposal is in front of the building. So that's kind of the nuances of the zoning questions that are in front of the TPZ tonight. So if it works for you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have the applicant talk about what they're proposing to do and answer questions from the commission.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Greg Carey. My address is 949 Washington Street in Holliston, Massachusetts. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. With me to my right is Gareth Wilson. He's a civil engineer from BL Companies in Hartford. And to my left is Jeremy Smith from Waldron Engineering. Waldron Engineering is an electrical engineering firm. Jeremy also is providing fire safety consulting for this project. If I may, Mr. Chairman, we've prepared a presentation. You may have it in front of you, or maybe up on the screen.
We're bringing it up right now.
Okay,
Yep, so it was
great.
included in the packet, and I am bringing it up on the screen.
And what I'd like to do, and we have copies, hard copies of extra ones if they're needed. So I'd just like to walk through it if I may. RWE Clean Energy is a renewable energy company. Our headquarters is in Valhalla, New York. We have a local office in Danbury. We have over 2,000 employees in the United States. As you can see, we've developed a relationship with the Connecticut Green Bank. These battery units are being installed in conjunction with the Connecticut Green Bank's Energy Storage Solutions Program. And last year and the last 2 years, we've been awarded top performer by the Connecticut Green Bank. In terms of an overview of the battery storage unit itself, I think one of the important features to know is this battery is going to be connected to the building's electric meter. So it's going to run through the meter that's already servicing the property. And in addition to that, the battery will also provide the capacity for backup service, backup power in the event of an outage. The battery basically charges and dispatches energy to and from the grid. And it's remotely monitored on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week. The battery equipment can be shut down remotely. And we met, it has to be 5 or 6 weeks ago with Paul and the building inspector and the fire department, and talked about a emergency management program that we're going to implement if this battery were to be approved. In terms of specifics about the battery system itself, the size is going to be just under 1 megawatt. Right now, we think we're going to be using a Tesla battery, but that may change subject to availability, cost, how long it would take to get it delivered. The battery dimension is 5 feet wide by 29 feet long. It's enclosed with a chain link fence that's locked, that has appropriate signage that the fire department has to sign off on. And this battery is going to be screened with landscaping, so it's not visible from the roadway. And that's just a general overview. Obviously, we'll answer any questions. I'd like Jeremy just to give you an overview of the fire protection, fire safety features.
Thank you, Chris. Hi again, Jeremy Smith, Fire Protection Engineer with Waldron Engineering. This system is designed to the latest code, which is NFPA 855 and the International Fire Code, Chapter 12. The particular system we're talking about tonight has been tested, large scale fire test and a large scale safety test. That means that actual units have been actually forced to undergo a failure, and they watch that failure very carefully, issued a report so that people like me can interpret that report and decide how to best address that in the community. This system would come with an onboard controller monitoring multiple points and can accomplish a shutdown before any kind of thermal runaway gets going. So it monitors at the cell level, the module level, and at the rack level. So it's 3 layers of security right there, preventing any kind of issue. This is a modern design. We've gotten away from when we used to put these into shipping containers. That turned out to be a really bad decision. And so now these are all exterior maintained, exterior access only. There's an active container ventilation system called a sparker. So if there was to be a buildup of any kind of gas, we're gonna put that gas out and combust it in little sparks so that there's no chance of a buildup of combustible gases, something we also learned through trial and error. The Knox box, documentation box is a gate, so you'll have a full response guide printed on laminated sheets, and right there you come with your Knox box, you open it, there's everything you need to know, all the contact lists, everything required. We're gonna do a supervising, do a walkthrough familiarization tour with the fire department once the system is installed, so that they know everything about it. They know where the buttons are, they know who to call, they know where the documentation is, and more importantly, address with them the correct steps if there was, in the extremely unlikely event there is ever an issue. And we'll have a site-specific emergency response plan, again, in that Knox box for them, with all the steps they need to follow and all the people to call. So emergency response, just like an energized substation, this is an electrical device. There's stored electricity there that can really only be dealt with by the utility and specialized BESS personnel. So there is no case where they need to go in or try to do anything active with the site. We recommend 100-foot setback. So when they arrive on site to set up their operations, should be about 100 feet away from the actual unit. Address any brush fires or impinging fires would be the only direction. If there's anything around it, we're going to cut back the vegetation right there and put down this foundation, concrete foundation, put riprap down so that no vegetation grows up inside of it. So you shouldn't have any of those issues. There are going to be a operations personnel available on short call to come to the site so that you know that there's someone who's coming to assist you. Fire department equipment, thermal imaging camera that's become so popular recently, portable APC extinguisher that you would already have, and then breathing apparatus in the extremely unlikely event that you had any kind of approach that needed to be made. Again, we're not recommending that. Of course, the incident commander or IC of the fire department is the final call. He decides. He runs the show should there ever be an incident. And any potential things you need to do in the yard, you'll need to wait for either a utility employee or an RWE employee to come to the site.
Great. Thank you. So we're happy to answer any questions. that you may have.
Yes. Commissioners, you have any questions? Any questions at all? Yes, Mr. Woods.
So if I understood you correctly, you recommend that the battery be installed 100 foot from the building?
No, sir. I'm saying if after all, that we have the safety lever issues that are going to prevent any kind of thermal runaway event. So never in the life cycle of battery, 10, 20 years, should you have an event, you shouldn't have to worry about it. However, because we do everything worst case scenario, we are going to put together a response guide, and that response guide will have a recommendation that the IC or incident commander of the fire department sets up his mobile command roughly 100 feet away from the battery.
Misunderstood.
No problem. Yep, no, that's, so they're saying, you know, there's always a question, well, how, you know, where should I set up? What's mobilization like? How close should I be to it? Since there's no one to rescue and nothing to do with the unit, there's no reason to approach it.
Jim? Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's just a difficult site. You've got the pool to the rear of the building, so you probably wouldn't want to put it there.
I do not. You are correct, sir.
Right,
Thank you.
because you're gonna have people in there. It's set back far enough, I believe, from the road, that I don't think it'll provide any issues with sight lineage, sightage. And you have to, do you know, which you probably can't answer this question, but do you know what you would be using as landscape material?
We would try to provide a solid screen, whether it be arborvitae or something that we could plant so that it would block the view of.
So the goal is a solid green wall.
That's exactly right. And we tried to show it on our sketch.
Yeah, I see it.
Probably didn't do a great job, but that gives you an idea of.
Well, just obviously it leaves it wide open because all it is a little green box. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes. No. Yeah, I think there's a whole row of arborvitae along that other property line too. You probably just continue that.
Right.
Well, my question is, I mean, one of the questions that Paul brings up here is if we look at this as accessory use, it's in the front yard, which is not necessarily allowed under accessory use. Can you explain to us why it has to be there? So we can know why you can't put it somewhere else on the property.
Yeah, so because this has to tie in to the electrical grid, while it does serve the building as well, the primary function for the state of Connecticut will be to be able to draw these batteries. All of these will be intelligently linked together. And they've already done studies on smaller scale showing that they can turn these batteries on and off like a virtual power plant of considerable size. We're talking hundreds of megawatts of power would become available to DEEP, to UI, to Eversource at the flick of a switch. They press a button, suddenly they have 100 megawatts. This means they don't have to port power in from outside ISO New England. They don't have to turn on coal plants in the Midwest or natural gas plants in West Springfield or these other bigger locations. We can avoid that because things like the 5 p.m. lighting surge, 7 p.m. peak cooling hours, we have a ride through now, a virtual power plant that we can turn on. Having said all that, it needs to be close to the pole.
It needs to be close.
It needs to be close to the pole.
Or because of the loss and
Yes,
power along
yeah,
the way, or because of the cost of putting it further back.
yeah. The utility runs at a very high voltage, but the unit is only the same voltage that you would run a big motor and a big HVAC inside a building. So it wants to be as close as possible so that I don't lose a lot of that energy storage. We want the most. So we would like, if I had my way, they'd all be, you know, directly next to the pole at the side of the streets. But then I don't want the traffic either as a safety engineer. So.
Yeah, I'd also point out that, as I mentioned before, we're tying into the building's utility meter, and that meter is located at the front of the building. So obviously, we're in the same general area. That's a benefit as well.
Okay, yeah, so there's definitely an electrical reason.
There's electrical reason.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Minor has had his hand raised online.
Yes, Commissioner Minor, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick questions and a couple observations. I noticed the location is proposed relatively close to the right of way for the state. That particular area has had multiple motor vehicle accidents that have actually placed vehicles in this same area. What protection does the equipment have, or what's being proposed outside of landscape screening in terms of physically being struck by a motor vehicle? Would be my first question. my second question would be if there is a way to isolate these racks or if they are all physically connected to one another and are remotely disengaged from each other in the event of a fire. And I'm just questioning if this is new technology that I'm never heard of, or if this has been around for a while. I just am not familiar with it. Just start with those two, if you would.
So if I could answer the last question first.
You're good. He
Thanks.
remuted himself.
Yeah, I installed my first grid scale battery energy storage system in 2018. To me, this is, this is the fourth generation of the technologies that I've been involved with projects installing. So I think it's a very mature, very safe project. There are thousands of megawatts installed already. Tesla has built a 1 gigawatt, 1,000 megawatt factory in Nevada to keep pumping these out as quickly as possible. We as a society have what's called the duck-shaped curve. We're overproducing renewables and then losing them. Our wind, our hydro, our photovoltaics, because we can't save the energy and use it when we need to. Instead, we're spinning up big gas plants. So this helps solve that. This is a mature, developed technology. 7 years, I've never had an incident, never even had an alarm go off. Except during commissioning, which I have a bunch of alarms, it's always very complex. But once we get the system ironed out, very smooth, very good operation. In fact, some of the older batteries didn't have the kind of lifespan, and I'm already going into decommissioning on one system that is one of the first that I installed. So its 7-year lifespan is done, its batteries are worn out, and it's being decommissioned.
And the guardrail. Gareth.
Thank you. My name is Gareth Wilson, project manager at BL Companies.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Is that better?
Is it on?
No, no.
Is the green on?
It's green, yes.
You're on.
Excellent. Sorry. Thank you. For the vehicle safety, we have proposed a guide rail surrounding the frontage of the battery unit itself. So if in the event if ever a vehicle did come off the road, it would hit the guide rail first, then there would be our landscaping, then there would be the fence enclosure before it ever hits the battery unit. So as far as vehicle protection goes, there's not a lot more we could do other than a large lump of concrete there, which would be overkill. So it's fairly standard practice for vehicle protection. As for the
Chris, you got him mute. Chris, yeah, I got him mute.
Yeah, we might have been wanting to say another addition, but yes.
Oh, that's fine. I was just going to go on and follow my colleague's point. These are coming a lot more common. We have seen a stepped increase in interest in designing them. We're doing several with our client, bidding on several others, and already have some in the progress with other clients. So it's coming more and more common, especially on this scale. So that's what we're trying to solve today.
And we're, just so you'll know, we're developing, again, through the Connecticut Green Bank, 6 other battery unit locations in Connecticut, very similar to this.
Y'all set, Chris?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So do you have any currently online with Eversource in Connecticut that have been online, or are the bulk of your projects out of state?
No, I'm not aware of any in this program, in the Connecticut Green Bank program, that have been developed in Connecticut. I do know that there is a battery storage unit on Richard Street, which I think is tied into a solar array. But we've developed them across the country for many years. And most recently, in the last, say, 24 months, we've developed them at UMass Amherst, at the Ardsley Middle School in New York, and at the Mount Pleasant Community Center in Westchester County.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I do have a quick comment. that intersection up there, we've had a lot of accidents, as Commissioner Minor has said. I would like to see or suggest ballards here. I've seen trucks go through Jersey barrier. I've seen trucks go through ballards, and this guardrail, they go through. We have a lot of heavy trucking using that road right now. So even though it comes out and hooks to the right, but sometimes you get people fly up there and, so it's only a suggestion.
No,
But I'd
well
like to
noted.
see something other than flex beam. I mean, you could use flex beam in the back or in the front, but the ballards or something similar to that would give you more protection for traffic.
Good suggestion. We'll
And
certainly
then,
do that.
You're done, Commissioner Fox.
oh, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, no, my question was kind of similar. That's a good idea. Because I was thinking of either guardrails or the balustrades, but I was thinking of how far into the state right of way it would go. In other words, would there be trouble with the,
No, this would be, well, I don't know.
or
To
am I,
me,
or am I off base here?
well, the state right away, I believe, according to this thing, is 30 feet. So between the state right away and where this is gonna go, I believe it's 40 some odd feet. Am I correct?
Yes, so the plan that we have up, it shows the unit itself. The pad that it's on, the 10-foot, located at about 30 feet from the front property line.
Right. From the state right away, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
That's the only reason, because I know it was last year, the year before, it was two cars that hit, and one of them actually wound up in this area. So I'm just suggesting, if you're gonna put this type of unit in, and it's gonna be in front, then you're gonna want to put some protection.
Agreed.
Okay? Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Droz.
A few quick questions, I'm sorry. You mentioned the dimensions of this are 5 by 29. How tall is it? It doesn't say.
It's,
I'm sorry.
it's 9 feet tall.
9 foot tall.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's pretty big. Okay. Next thing, just a clarification. Commissioner Woods asked about the 100-foot setback. And you'd said that it was for the fire department's headquarters, like when they do their emergency out on the.
Yeah, in a response scenario, the first person on site designates as the incident commander or IC in accordance with the national model for incidents response. So that car is probably car or a pickup is first responder. He's the IC. Wherever he's parked, that's the headquarters.
Gotcha.
Now, if there's a large, not a one unit, now I'm, talking about the 200 megawatt power projects I've done where, a mobile command will come and lots of hazmat vehicles and there'll be a big setup. That whole thing is 100 feet away. But the standard is we recommend to you.
Okay.
But I'm a fire protection engineer. I don't tell fire chiefs what to do. They tell me what they want. So I make a recommendation and then they tell me what to do. So we're going to write a manual. We're going to put 100 feet in there. Fire chief's going to look at that. He's going to say 75, 125, 50, whatever number he's going to give me. And that's what it's going to be.
Don't understand. Because that's not what it says on page 7.
I'm sorry.
It says fire department maintain 100-foot setback from the best unit experiencing a condition. Which then brings us up to, if we're less than 100 feet away from the road. And we've got to maintain 100-foot setback. If it experiences a condition, we've just shut down East Cedar Street.
No, again, sir, that's the fire department. If they're not performing a rescue or putting out an auxiliary fire, or if there's a brush incident that causes the expert, they're not directly involved in doing something with the battery. That's just a recommendation where they should set up shop or if they should set back. If they have to do something, they're going to do it. If there's a burning vehicle next to the battery energy storage, yeah, we want you to approach that burning vehicle and put it out before it impacts the battery. In that case, you would be within that 100-foot.
Just trying to get clarification.
No problem.
You wrote in here, somebody wrote, because it says the opposite. That's why I was asking. I'm sorry.
We'll clarify that.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman Minor has his hand raised again.
Yes, Commissioner Minor.
Yeah, just on a quick clarification on that. In all reality, if there were to be a thermal runaway situation with this, it would not be directly addressed as our current SOP that we have in the fire department. That's how it would be handled at this point. It would be all handled by remote personnel coming in. But you're correct. That would essentially shut down East Cedar Street in the event that there was any type of an emergency there.
Thank you, Commissioner Minor. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Droz.
Sorry. There's one photo you show on page 5, all the way to the right. Is that large lawn area behind the building? And it looks like another parking lot. Is that all part of the same property?
It is.
It is, okay. Next question. How much energy loss are you actually talking about to have the batteries behind the building instead of at the pole?
That would depend on the size of the wire used.
I understand.
Yep. So, and you're also talking about the further you are away, the more voltage loss I'll have. And the harder it will be for me to respond to frequency. I'm at 480 and the grid's at, 12,470 or 13,200 or 13,800, whichever it is. So I have a transformer between me and them, so I'm trying to work through that transformer. So I'd like to keep all the wiring as short as possible.
Yeah, I would also point out that it's my understanding the property owner would like to, at some point in the future, use that available land to possibly expand the facility as well.
Okay. All right, all right. Thank you.
All set, Commissioner? Any other commissioner? Yes, Commissioner Woods.
One little commentary. I find it interesting that we're now going back to where we started 100 years ago. 50% of motor vehicles were all electric until guess who came along? Henry Ford. And then the invention of gasoline readily available, and it blew it all out. But over 50%, Porsche even made an electric vehicle in the late 1800s. That was the direction everybody was going. So it is kind of funny. We take a while to come around. But it is what it is. The I had a question and I forgot what it was. I'll come back to it.
Okay. Any other commissioners or questions? No. Paul, do you have anything? No, sorry. Good.
I'm speaking as one commissioner. I see this no different than a modern day generator. And that's basically what it is. Instead of generating the power, right? It stores the power to be used as a generator. We would consider that an accessory use. Do we have the ability to allow this in the front yard?
Yep, so again, there's a couple sections of our zoning regulations, but they specifically talk about, that the accessory uses shall not be located in front of the accessory buildings shall conform to the requirements of section 4 for the zone. An accessory building shall not be located in front of the principal building and shall only be located to the rear or side of the principal building. So again, how we've always viewed it from zoning, it's not just exactly in front of the specific building. You have in front of the building is that front yard that we have that goes from the face of the building all the way to the street across the lot. You have the side from the sides and the rear. So by our current regulations, that's kind of why I brought it up too. It's not only the use itself, but the location. Something would have to change if we do. If we consider this accessory use, an accessory structure, that per our regulations, it needs to be in the side or in the rear. So a separate regulation would have to be potentially generated that for BESs that however they could be approved, whether the commission would feel that staff could approve of them or whether the commission would want to see them if they are located in front. So it would be something along the lines of, that if you were okay with this type of use, and I think we all have a better understanding of the use at this point too, that if they were located to the side and the rear, that they could be handled administratively by staff as a generator. But in front is a different type of scenario by our zoning regulations. You either A, have to get a variance, which is a whole thing in itself, or would have to create some language in our zoning regulations on how we address it in the front. We also have the requirement of fences that don't allow fences in the front of the property to be over 4 feet tall. And of course, in this one, obviously the preference would be a 6-foot fence to provide security around it as well. So those are the kind of hitches in the current zoning regulations for this location that would have to be addressed one way or another, likely through a zoning amendment.
And when you did maybe a year and a half ago, you fixed the mechanical stuff setbacks and you included the language for generators in that language for residentials, propane tanks, AC units, all that stuff. And again, it's,
So it requires some work on our end.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, if I,
I'm sorry.
yes, Commissioner Hoffman.
Seeing the location that you have this on the very front, parallel to the street. How would it work if you tried turning it 90 degrees and move it up the side just a little bit?
Well, it's funny you say that because that's where our original design was. And the fire department asked us to, I believe it was the fire department, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, made the suggestion of turning it to its current location and moving it further away from the property line, which we did. I guess our concern would be that by pulling it further into the parking lot, we could be interfering with drive aisles and parking spaces and traffic coming in and out. That's why when we designed this, we thought from our perspective, it was in the sort of the side corner of the lot, out of the way of traffic and drive aisles. That was our thinking, that this would be the best location so they didn't interfere with anything.
And
It just
Commissioner,
seems like you're farther away from the street if you turn it. You know, it's 90 degrees. So it's running along the side, even if you leave it basically where it is, but just turn it 90 degrees.
Right, then you're in the drive aisle. That's.
You're gonna lose parking spaces anyway.
Yeah.
I think.
So by moving it over, you know, it's gonna be over by more towards where that car is located on the side. And you're gonna lose maybe 2 parking places right there.
Yeah, but just to raise the other issue of moving it further away from the property line where the motel is, that's one of the comments the fire department made.
Where does the incoming feed come in? To the east side of the building,
Yeah, right at
right by the
corner.
property line,
Yeah, right
towards
at
the
that
property
corner.
line?
The corner that it's closest to right now.
It just seems to me that would be a whole lot less of an aggravation if you just moved it, but that's just my thought.
and Commissioner Hoffman, I can kind of address it too, that when we originally met and we were discussing the location, it was located, and you can see it on the screen where you can see the cursor, where that white car is down there. But the issue is, so right now as proposed, it's 45.5 feet away from the hotel. So that brought it, I think it was within 20 something feet, potentially at the closest location to the hotel, 20, 30 around that mark. And that was the concern of the fire marshal and of planning and engineering when we met, that the closer you get to that structure, again, with those arborvitaes and with that use, that was a concern. Again, it's the chance of thermal runaway, as we've seen in that, it's low. You know, it's depending on what literature you read. Some say, you know, it's sub 1%, is depending on what it looks at that. There has been some in the past. We discussed the New York ones where it was more of a manufacturing issue that they had that they resolved within the company, that there was 3 successive ones, but it was all traced back to one company who decided that what they did is they shortened their supply chain and took over the process when they originally had it multiple steps, and that lost some stability and it lost some basically, you know, quality of the product. So that had been resolved with that company. But that was the kind of concern, is were they moving closer to that adjacent use, and that use being a, you know, transient, you know, dwelling type of use, having it that close with the arborvitae, that could be a concern. So that's why I originally moved a little away from that corner as well. Staff had originally discussed too the possibility of locating them, kind of sliding it down within this area of the site, which is closer to the front and side of the building, depending on how you look at how it's laid out. But there was concerns with loss in that location as well in the distance. Again, it's something that we have been discussing with them regarding where this location is, but this is the location that they've kind of most secured and settled upon at this moment. But with the feedback from the TPZ, that could potentially change, and we can continue to work with them.
Yeah, and just please keep in mind, we're working with a property, we're just leasing this area. Property owners has the final say as to where it can or can't go.
Right.
Commissioner, excuse me, you all set, Commissioner Hopper? Thank you. Commissioner
I guess
Pasquale?
that sort of leads to my question. So you're leasing this area because you would like to have this functional unit, this battery working, and it gets tied into the grid and it works in concert with other batteries.
Correct.
So the size of this thing has to be that size in order to do that job. There aren't, and I'm only asking because we're talking about distances and, issues with the parking lot and, other property owners. Is this like one type, this thing is just one size?
Well, the system size, and I'll let Jeremy answer, give you a more technical answer, but the system size has to stay the same, but there are different technologies. What we're presenting is a Tesla unit. Jeremy can tell you that there are others that may be comparable that have different.
Yeah, when you size the unit, you're looking for something that's not gonna impact the grid. So you have to have something that's, meaningful to the grid, but not gonna require a new substation, or anything like that. So you have to use available capacity of lines, available load demand. Also, the developer applied to the CT Green Bank, which had certain limits depending on the peak of the actual structure to make sure it was of use to that owner, and they weren't using this program to put in, like I said, like a gigantic 200 megawatt facility. This is related to that building and it's acceptable to the grid. So the size will change. If we go with a different model, the size will change, but not appreciably. It might go to 800 kilowatts instead of 770.
And by size, I was talking about the dimensions though. So the dimensions of the unit that you need it's more or less.
There's 3 available manufacturers who have modern, acceptable, tested systems, which are, remarkably similar. It would be hard for a layperson to distinguish between them. There are some other systems that come in smaller segments that can build up. There's one that's 250 kilowatts, so we'd actually use 3 of those and achieve 750 kilowatts instead of the exact number shown, which is 767. So yeah, the footprint could change a bit, but we'd try to stay within the same fence. So we're trying to get all of these within the same fence, so we're not feeling like we're baiting and switching and saying it's going to be this, and then it's huge.
Does this battery benefit Newington customers at all? Is it somehow functional to our community, the fact that it's here? Or is it just yours?
Well, you can.
Yep. Yeah, it benefits everyone in Connecticut. In fact, it benefits everyone in ISO New England. Because once enough of these get installed, like I said, they become a virtual power plant. So we can turn all of these on. We may even be able to link them into power walls or the residential type units that are also going in. So we can have all of this energy. We can gather all the PV all the photovoltaic solar panels generating their peak power at 3 p.m., save it and deploy it at 7 p.m., which is when we really, really need it to stop gas plants from coming on and running for 2 hours. There's very little that we're switching on and off quickly like that. That's as inefficient as a simple cycle gas turbine plant. And that's what we're using right now to handle some of these surges. We're turning on a gas plant that doesn't have any kind of energy recovery on the back end. It's 30% efficient. A lot of that heat goes up the stack. We lose 70% of the chemical value of the natural gas we just consumed. We put all those NOx, that CO2 into the air just to cover us, because we all turn our lights on at about 5 p.m. and our air conditioners are peak cooling demand is at 7 p.m. And that's not when the sun is shining at its peak.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that Jen?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That leads me to another question to the chairman. So in this case, as you are the applicant, the land, and you're renting space from the landlord. There's a tenant-landlord relationship here, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you're talking about additional installations such as this around town, let's say, where you might be renting space somewhere else, or let's say, okay, as a resident, I have solar panels. Okay, would I be, like if, eventually, would your, God bless you.
Excuse me.
Would your, best systems be of advantage to me or other residents with solar panels?
it'd be of advantage. Potential is potential. So your solar panels are developing potential that's feeding the grid
Yeah.
at that time, and we would be taking some of that energy. I couldn't state a specific relationship between any one solar panel and a battery energy storage in the community. But yes, all the solar work, all the wind, all the hydro that we've done will be of more value to us as a society as we build out our battery energy storage infrastructure.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and the Connecticut Green Bank does provide incentives for residential homeowners to install batteries, if they have solar panels, for
Right.
example, on their roof.
Yeah,
So there are incentives.
Yeah, and so this, and this is like this kind of person. I also have a contract with my provider where they're leasing the rest of my roof and selling electricity selling it, to Eversource. Would this have anything would there be any correlation here? 'Cause
Just in the larger sense that, that, again, that solar, the more solar we have, that's great, but it's great at 3 PM. And we do have a lot of energy demand at 3 PM, but we have a lot of energy demand at 7 PM.
Mhm.
And the sun started to set at 5. We got our lighting surge at 5, and we got our peak cooling at 7. So that's what we call the duction. How do we take these renewables? How do we take that hydro that's running all day long, as long as there's water in the river? How do we take the wind when it blows? How do we take the sun when it shines? How do we save that for when we, as a society, really need all that electricity? And we'd much rather do that by drawing from the batteries that we've installed as a system than flicking on a gas-fired turbine plant for 2 hours.
Amazing. By the way, are you a member of Mensa?
I'm sorry?
A member of Mensa, you should be.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for that compliment, but no, I'm not.
Commissioner Fox, you all set? One more quick question, please. I heard your explanation about how long the batteries last. Is that 5 years, or do you know how long these generally would last before you had to service them? I'm
Yeah,
just curious.
specifically using the Tesla as an example. Individual module packs, so about yay by yay. Those are the service level that we do.
Right.
So we're actually backing a box truck off, rolling off a fork truck, bringing that module in. It's fairly heavy. Taking the old one out, putting the other one in. Then it would go to one of the repair facilities. Designated repair for Connecticut is probably Houston, Texas. So that would go there. So we don't get to the cell level until it's there. But typical 365 full load transactions, one a day for 10 years. Tesla, I'll lose about 28% of my capacity value. So a simple example, using 1,000 kilowatt hours, I'm going to have 280 of those are going to get lost after 10 years. And I'll still have 720 kilowatt hour value of battery. At that point, the developer is going to make a choice about the longevity of it. I almost guarantee you that in 10 years, the modules that we put back in are going to be newer, better.
No, I was just wondering how often you have to service them or whatever. That's all.
You should plan on about 2 trips a year. That's an average. There'll be much less in the beginning and much more at the end. But if you average 2 trips a year, plus those are trips that are actually doing something, and then they're just checks. There'll be annual checks. There'll be checks on the fire alarm system. There'll be checks just for the general condition of the fencing and the equipment. They're just visual checks, very short, one or 2 guys, 1 passenger car. Gone.
I was just curious, that's all. Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? Paul, any questions?
Yep, so it will be not so much a question, but again, it's staff looking for guidance from the commission on which direction you would like to go with BESS. And it seems like, I get the feeling that, yes, this use, been briefed on it, that it is a kind of an accessory use to that. But the biggest question is, how would you like to deal with it in front of the property? Because that's something that, my interpretation of the regulations, it doesn't permit it in front of the property. So is the commission comfortable with some type of regulation that would put it okay to be in front of the property? And then what's the level of commission activity or involvement in that type of application? Is it something that's site plan? Is it something that's special permit? Or is it something that you're comfortable with staff dealing with it as an administrative approval? again, those are our typical 3 levels. So that's kind of what my question to the TPZ, because to move forward, right now, my interpretation would be, okay, the fence is over 4 feet tall, can't be in the front yard, it's in front of the property, the accessory needs to be on the side or the rear. So where would the TPZ like me to go with dealing with this? Do you want to see a regulation? Is there any type of interpretation that you can make that, again, it is a little larger than a typical transformer and it is more akin to a generator, again, because it's associated with the property itself. It's not, you know, a typical inline utility feed for the property like a transformer in the front would need to be. But that could be a determination of the commission as well.
Commissioner Woods, any comment?
Well, I think I'd like to see our regulations changed to allow this into a front yard. But I also think that, I don't know, are they make much bigger ones than these units? Are they?
They can, the size can grow.
This is 1 gigawatt.
With this would be a building block. So I would put more and more of these. If I was building a typical 200 megawatt facility, there would be 200 of these boxes.
So maybe what we do is we allow 1 gigawatts to be handled administratively. And if it gets bigger than that, then it comes. to
1 megawatt.
Megawatt.
Yep. I'll provide just for the commission's part of the previous staff report too. Again, I did talk to the siting council and again, I did talk to the applicant. There is a back and forth about our battery energy storage is all under the siting council or is under the 1 megawatt because there's a 1 megawatt exclusion for, you know, solar and that typical green energy, renewable energy sources. Again, the applicant, I believe that their legal counsel has reviewed it and they believe that if it's under 1 megawatt falls under that. We did the back and forth of saying, yes, you know, there's no harm in it being approved by the TPZ or being approved by the town, that if the siting council pulls these things in and says, okay, no, we made some determination that says, no, these should go to the siting council. But the reason why I said all that to build on it is we will not see something bigger than 1 megawatt as a TPZ application. It'll be something that we get to comment on at the siting council. But for example, the siting council has approved many of them in front yards and industrial areas particularly, but in front yards and even with the planner's comments of saying, hey, 6-foot fences aren't allowed. And the siting council goes, noted, and says, well, no, 6-foot fence is going in because it's for security. The siting council has the call when it's over 1 megawatt. You know, we wouldn't be as CDs as our applications. It would be the siting council having their jurisdiction and their call, and we'd be commenting on it.
Commissioner Pascarelli?
I don't know. I think my only, it's sort of, it is what it is kind of situation, I think, right here, especially given that the siting council will have their own determination on the larger. I suppose we don't have to worry about these ending up in people's front yards of their homes. I would be concerned about residential situations and how neighbors would feel about that. But, you know, obviously it seems like from a practical standpoint, they need to be close to the utilities. So I don't know that there's, yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Nafis?
I agree with Commissioner Woods. I'd like to see regulation, but I'd also like to see kind of like a site plan review of some kind. Because, I mean, you're gonna have the screening and the offsets from the roadways, everything we talked about today in terms of this particular quote unquote site plan here. So that's what I would like to see.
Commissioner Fox?
Yeah, I can agree with Woods and Nafis and, you know, yeah, some kind of amendment where 4 feet except when, something like that, you know, 4 feet, you know, maybe, you know, certain things allowed. And, you know, one specifically here, you know, a maximum 1 megawatt, that's installation, you can go to 9 feet or whatever.
Okay. Commissioner Hoffman?
I don't know if you understood that or not.
I like the idea of having a regulation up to a certain size. And, you know, like Commissioner Nafis said, and Commissioner Wood said, and then from there, you know, let the site group take care of it.
Okay.
But I don't think it should be in a residential area. You know, keep it more in a commercial or industrial area.
Commissioner Droz?
I agree with with Commissioner Davis's point as far as site plan wise, put it into perspective, the size of the box we're talking about, it's almost the height of the wall behind you, shy of that soffit. It's the length of this table and it's 5 foot wide. That's a big box.
Right.
So from a site plan aspect, it's a 9-foot box, but we can't put bigger than a 4-foot fence. So to Commissioner Wood's point, what are we putting for trees in front of it? Because it needs to be a lot of hiding. It's a big box. So obviously not the residential, et cetera, but that much having been said, it's a big box. It's right next to the road or mighty close to the road. So that would be my only thought process, okay? Is what are we really doing to not make it look like we're taking something essentially the size of a storage container, albeit a little narrower, same height, same length, actually longer than a 20. What are we doing it to not make it look like that? That would be my number one concern after safety, obviously. So.
Commissioner Coma,
Commissioner Navis and
can you speak in the microphone, please?
Oh, I would agree with Commissioner Navis and Commissioner Woods about a regulation.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Minor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have reservations about making a quick move on this. I think this is going to be the first of many to come. I would like to do some additional research before we go ahead and commit to anything. I think at the very least, special permit should be something that we should consider versus a all-out change. My concerns are that, you know, this is the first one that's coming before us that is going to be used for commercial use. This is different than Richard Street, where they're storing their own energy, using their own energy. This is a business enterprise that is trying to bridge a gap with Eversource. And I think by allowing just a carte blanche availability to install these, again, we don't have one in Connecticut yet. I really don't want to be a guinea pig to find out how everything goes. And in terms of a 1 meg unit is massive. And yes, I would expect siting council to be involved in that. But in what we're discussing now, I would like to table it for the moment and try to get some additional information as well as bring in some of our additional town staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I have kind of, again, I'll keep discussing with the applicant to the pre-app. As noted again, not an application, just a information session. So I'll talk also with the fire marshal and kind of put something together. Again, as we discussed at the last meeting too, I do want to work on solar as well, and have the charging station, and you know, this can all kind of be rolled out together, but this is all really, we're working on an energy agenda right now with all these different items that are coming up. But this is important right now. This is, again, there is funding behind it. There is legislation push behind it. There is interest in this right now, and it is a necessary thing for energy future. But again, how it's done, where it gets put in, I can come up with some ideas and some concepts and look forward. And again, as I've talked to other planners, the applicant has worked in some other towns too. One planner I talked to pretty much just said, yeah, we just saw it as a generator. Then again, it might not have been in front. It might have been a different one, but they just said, no, it was accessory, and they just approved it by staff. I've had another planner I've talked to who are there working with them right now, and they were concerned with adjacency to residential structures. So we're all kind of working through this right now, and everyone has a slightly different approach. But I can come up with some ideas and run that through the commission.
Will you have those ready for next meeting?
I will do my best.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next is old business, electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Well,
Okay, so if you want to share the actual document, I can. Yep. So I'll share this. Never fast enough. So based upon our previous discussion from the last meeting, I've kind of prepared three options for the commission. And if you have any other things you would like to see in here, please let me know. Again, what we're at, the stage we're at right now is I'm looking to hone in what we want to put in this regulation. Just as a reminder, this is required by the Public Act, shall do this. This shall be in the municipality's regulations. And what I've done is prepared kind of three different levels. So option one that I provided is pretty much, we've seen this before, is in the past. I think the only change I did is including mixed use development, because the more I've researched other ones, if someone says, well, I'm a commercial and multifamily, it's parsing words, but you know, it's just in there. But this is the one that's pretty much straightforward, just the 10% requirement per the state statute, pretty much wording exactly from it with the definitions. So this is what I consider to be minimally compliant with the Public Act, would be the regulation that's option number one. Option number two that I put forward kind of brought in the concept of, again, it's the same item for one, for the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, but it adds in applicable development to kind of provide a little more information to the applicant of what is considered new development. So we can either, if it did not have applicable development, new development would be new development, new ground up, you know, virgin land, undisturbed, or complete demolition of a site. I could see that being there. But as it was brought up, you have ones like 67 Payne where, okay, the gutting is still there. It's more like, you know, that's more like the aggressive remodels that are done with FEMA remodeling.
The roof is still there.
Yes, exactly. The roof is still there, you know, with FEMA stuff. When I did coastal stuff before, I was like, okay, remove this one wall, we remove this other wall. We did them in different sections, so we would be compliant with it doesn't meet the substantial improvement. But this kind of defines what applicable development. So new development would mean vacant site, kind of as we discussed before, proposed additions or redevelopment of a site that increases the number of parking spaces or impervious area by more than 50%, the existing conditions, and then redevelopment of a site that is proposing to disturb more than 50% of the area of the existing site. So, you know, you could see one where, okay, they're expanding the footprint of the building and the parking. Okay, that's the 50%. Okay, they have a large area of the site. They want to disturb another area. That's another 50%. How can they work that in? Again, this would be in front of the commission. There's always going to be a little bit of unforeseen, okay, how this got developed, how that got developed. Having zoning regulations that cover every eventuality, this thing will be 5 pages just for the charging regulations. And you're still going to have something that is an eventuality you do not see in a site development. But this really, that 50% threshold feels like a good area on that one. It was discussed at the last meeting that maybe be linked with what requires for the site plan, but that's only 10% of the change. I think if you were adding 10% to the building and not really changing the parking and only adding a couple spaces, that would actually cause you to do more disturbance to a site and a very expensive for someone who's just looking to add a little extra space onto their building. It might be a little more than the intent of what the state was looking to do with this regulation. So that's item 2, brings in that development part. So option 2. Option 3 brings it a little further. Again, same definition, same parking. It's a little more convoluted when you start adding in some other sections. So it's reframed, but the applicable uses are the same. The applicable development is the same, as I said, with the 50%. This one, we were kind of discussing about what would it be if we required charging stations anyway as part of the regulation. So you have a make ready standard, but then you have a install now, minimum charging stations. I put 2 parking spaces in there for an example. I've seen other examples where it's 1. Typically, when you install a charging head, most of them now have 2. So it's a dual that cover 2 spaces. So this would be, you know, if it was a thing that required 30 parking spaces, well, 10% and that would have been 3. We're requiring them to put in 2. They might put in the 3 anyway. They might just put in the 2, but the make ready would have to be there. Now, if you do with a very large site, there will be more sites that are ready under the ready infrastructure, but there will at least be an additional charging station there as well. 2 of them put in for parking spaces. it does a little bit of benefit of, you know, it is more of a cost. Yes, you're requiring them to put in the charging heads. They have to figure out the agreement, whether they're gonna own them, whether they're gonna have a company come in. You know, it might encourage them to be like, well, if we're putting in two, why don't we just put in the whole bank of them that we wanted to do anyway? But it does encourage the developer to have the electrical infrastructure, including in the panel and everything, up to what they need to be if they're putting in the two stations now. So that's the same. The infrastructure is the same as previously with the 10%. So that's not changed. It's just reorganized. But the main difference in 3 is making them put in 2 stations now, or up to 3% of the total. So, you know, if you had it was a huge parking lot, it's going to be more than 2 spaces. But again, you'd have to have 10% all of the things ready for the infrastructure and 3% installed now. It kind of moves us incrementally forward. And then whether you would like this or not, while I was adding in more, again, it's item 5, electric vehicle charging stations shall be regularly maintained to ensure proper functionality, have signage stating the contact voltage and amp levels, hours of operation, safety information, and usage fees. That's just for the public who's going to be using it. I've seen other regulations that actually say you have to make them free. That's a little back and forth on how you want to do it. Some communities have gone there. Some communities actually have, for example, they require you to put in the 10% now, and they make you do 25% of the infrastructure. So you have to have a full quarter of the lot, of the parking lot that has the infrastructure in place and ready. Again, these numbers can be moved. I'm open to suggestions, edits, comments, but this just gives you kind of 3 options to go forward on what you'd like to see for this regulation. So I can get ready to submit it to CROG for the 30-day review period, so I can get it on the agenda for an amendment.
Commissioner Woods?
Yeah, Paul, option 1 and option 2, you specifically call out that the spaces are to be dedicated to electric vehicles, but you don't, I think, in 3.
That might just be
Yeah, I think you just left it out.
okay. So I will look at that.
My problem with going with a larger number of spaces is we're going to restrict them to electric vehicles only. How do you enforce that? Who enforces that?
Right.
You know, I don't think you get a sign, but are you going to get an officer to come in and write a ticket? I don't think so.
No, it's on a private site, I think. it would
Yeah,
be.
It's not like accessible parking, right? That you can get a ticket on a private lot when you get towed. But this, I think, so, and also, it can mess up the whole parking allotment, right? If you start getting 10 or 12 spaces that are dedicated to electric vehicles, nobody has an electric vehicle. I'm not saying we're not going to get there, but I think that's a ways off. Well, out of the 3 options, I would probably go with 2 right now. Kind of the middle ground.
Just what Steve was saying, this is what I was kind of getting at last time. Are these electrical vehicle parking places or electrical vehicle charging stations? There's a big difference there, because if it's a charging station, I'm assuming someone's making money off of them charging there. They're gonna want vehicles to move in and out. It's not gonna be a parking space. And that was the question I had last week. What happens to our total number of spaces if we allocate so many to charging? And cars park there overnight if it's a charging station as opposed to a parking place? That has nothing to do with this regulation. It's just kind of a thought I had in my mind in terms of what do we do with our parking allocation. Some of these in commercial things, you're looking at people, you know, coming through town and stopping and charging while they're coming through town. That's not even part of our consideration for parking for these, you know, facilities. So I don't know.
Management on the site. You know, there is some responsibility of the property owner to manage their site and manage their parking.
But if we're requiring them to have 50 parking places, and they're requiring them to have 5 of them electrical vehicles, which is not a parking place. Now they only have 45 parking places. I know as our regs are usually, you know, pretty large in terms of the parking requirement, but it was just a thought I brought up and we kind of reinforced it.
Yep, and I agree. It is kind of, yeah, it's a mandate that's been put forward. The intention is great.
Yeah.
And again, with moving towards, if we were option 1 or 2, the charging stations won't be put right in right away, or maybe they will. It'll be up to the developer to say, okay, my use is either such a fast turnover that the likelihood of people being there for any duration more than 15 minutes doesn't work. Or, exemplary for housing, they're going to start going in on these residential apartments. There are already some on
You're
Big
gonna see
Road.
the house.
Yeah,
It's gonna happen.
And, as part of this Public Act too, it's not part of what we're discussing too, but the state even went further into the rights of condo owners, the rights of renters, the rights of that to install these. And basically a condo association can't tell you can't. The state overrid that and said, no, you have the right to do this and you shall be able to do it. Even renters, I'm telling them how they can tell that the owner of the property, no, I have a right by state statute to put in this charging station and work it out between the two of
But
them.
in residential, I mean, if you've got 30 spaces with whatever units and visitors and all that other stuff, but 5 of them are EV charging stations, people can't park there overnight. I mean, you're losing parking spaces, which we have to consider when we talk about our parking now.
Yep, and I think
That's my only point.
Yeah.
I don't want to really get into the weeds on that right now.
Yeah, and I would think
It was
for
just a thought.
a residential like building, for example, it's gonna be up to the property manager to decide whether they want to allow overnight parking or not. It might be one of those, okay, we only have 5 tenants who have these and there they go. Apparently they're their parking spaces
So we're
right
the
now.
ones that set the number of parking spaces they need.
Correct.
That's the point I'm making.
Yes.
That's what we might want to think about. And it's getting late, so that's enough.
Commissioner
But
Pat,
I agree with Steve on, I like the option 2.
Commissioner Pascarelli?
I mean, I'm sort of biased because I have an electric car, so maybe I should recuse myself from this conversation.
You can probably speak.
But I think when I think
More
about
expertise.
that somebody said 2 weeks ago, well, people don't want to have, they bought an electric car and now they've changed their mind. Well, that's because they can't charge it anywhere. So, we have to kind of help them, we have to kind of get together on this a little bit. So I don't really, I don't want to get into the weeds on the language or exactly how far out we want to go. I just think we should really think forward. And I actually think a smart business person on the Berlin Turnpike would want to put some charge heads up there. It would attract people like me to go shop there for 25 minutes. So, yeah, that's my 2
Commissioner
cents.
Fox?
Well, I was thinking on the same line as Steve, as Commissioner Woods. And then, kind of after Commissioner Pascarelli spoke about, well, I don't want this thing anymore because I can't charge it anywhere. And you hear a lot about that. And so I don't know if I'm ready to approve any one of them. I mean, if we had to, I'd probably approve of option 2, but I think maybe we think a little bit about, as you said, how much do we leave to the property manager and how much, do you think, how much misuse or abuse you're going to get of it from outside the vehicles that just come in and say, oh, I haven't been able to charge. I think I'll go stop at 1550 something or other. They have a couple of charging stations or the municipal parking lot. So.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with Commissioner Fox. I'm not sure we can really set anything up yet. Again, if it was gonna be something, it'd probably be 2. But as I said at the last meeting, we don't know whether this electric thing is gonna go forward or whether it's gonna slide. So if we start making,
Let's kill it.
restrictions or suggestions of what they need to have, we may be barking up the wrong tree at this time. So I'm not ready to sign any paper yet.
Commissioner Droz?
My thought is that option 2 gives us the most flexibility towards options in the future. The conduit is underground. We can hook up a charging station with nothing other than electrician running a snake through conduit and insert pole here. On the flip side, if hydrogen becomes a thing, the worst thing we're abandoning is a conduit that's underground. It gives us the ability to go in both directions. That's kind of my thought. Well, we would kind of lean towards option 2.
Commissioner Wakoma?
Feeling a little mixed about this.
You have to- Please talk to the microphone.
feeling a little mixed about this. I was leaning more toward option 3 because I believe it's a little bit more future oriented. I'm thinking of Trader Joe's, near Trader Joe's in that parking lot. There are all those charging stations that are there, and they've been there for a while. They were virtually empty for a very, very long time. Whenever we'd go over there, we'd rarely see any cars in there. Now when we go, we see many cars charging. They're not empty anymore. So it's been interesting to see over the period of time those stations have been installed, which I think has been a few years maybe. There is increased use of those stations. And I know quite a few people that have hybrids now or electric cars and are trading in their gas vehicles. So I think there's going to be a need, whether, we end up with, I think we'll end up with some kind of mixed energy use to fuel automobiles. But I think it could be a little bit more future oriented to have the connections available there. And property managers, it sounds like, can manage with some flexibility how those spaces will be used.
Thank you. Commissioner Minor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, of the options that are on the table, and I'm really not ready to pull the trigger just yet, would be option 2. My only reservations, as we keep talking about, new construction has to be constructed for future use. One of the things that I just want to make sure that is being addressed is the transformer size on these projects. Because once that transformer goes in, to change it out after the fact is an act of Congress. And the likelihood of being able to be utilized would be essentially nil. So that would be my only concern, is that we spell that out, that you have to have your minimum number, but you also have to have the ability to scale up to the maximum that is being discussed tonight. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
So I think that's, it's that parsing of what is adequate electrical supply. So if we wanted to, I keep adding words to regulations, it happens, they get a little lengthy, but if we want to put parents after it saying, what that actually maintains, or whether we want to say adequate electrical supply, including transformers and panels, and want to go that far. I think the intent for adequate electrical supply is that the equipment is there. We could add equipment. I could work on the wording on that one just to make it more clear. But that would be done at staff level review and when these plans come in. So the one issue we have is, as we know, when we get site development plans, all the MEPs aren't done yet. Very rarely would a developer fully develop out a building and spend, it's very expensive to have all the professionals do the MEPs for the building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, do the whole setup for the building without having a land use approval. Because especially if there are a special permit use, there is always a little bit of a gamble when you come in, will it be approved or not? Spending all that money developing out 100% plans is not done. That's just not how the process works. It would be on staff, again, whether it would be a condition of approval, whether it's a standard condition, or whether when this applies, that a building permit won't be issued until the electrical is reviewed in compliance with this, this regulation. It's going to be done with staff and the building official. The building official is going to be key in this role with staff review of the plans when the MEPs come in. Because, for example, when site plans come in, we have the conditions. Those have to be satisfied. We do not sign off on the building permit and give zoning approval until all those conditions are satisfied. So that's the point that this would really come in from the staff level on, okay, you got your approval, you have to have your infrastructure, you've shown the conduit, now the building official, you have to prove to the building official that you have adequate electrical supply and that it is designed for that. And their design engineer would include that in their design calculations. So that's the point that we would catch this in the process. And to kind of add to with the thinking about how spaces are used, there's a lot of options. And I actually would like to leave it more towards the property owner and managers to figure out how they want to use the spaces. Because example, you have public buildings where they're going to be public. You might have residential buildings where they want to keep it for the residential tenants, and maybe they, you know, they have them in an area of the property that's behind it. They don't want public driving into a private residential and using their chargers. The chargers are for the intent of the residents who are living there. I'm okay with that. And I think that's perfectly fine. It puts the infrastructure there, but it serves the residents of that building. It would solve an issue of, okay, you have the public coming in, you don't have it for the residents. Now you're having this issue of technically trespass. Because a large residential building is not it's not a public facility, it's private land. So I think having that freedom or flexibility for property managers to figure out how it works best for their use is not a bad thing in the case of this regulation.
Yeah, I think the simple workaround to that is, you know, for tenants and their guests is the workaround.
Somebody.
Yeah, and it could be, again, managed by, you know, they manage their parking now. There's nothing saying that, you know, we don't have requirements that, you know, a property owner could, for good example, it's actually Payne Road 98, I think is the new one, the mill yard behind it. They have certain areas that are for prospective tenants to park in front of it. That's a individual decision. As they don't have as much leasing going out, they might transfer those over to not prospective tenants, drop a couple spaces and make it a permanent space. They're still counted parking spaces for us, but they can manage it based upon the needs of their business.
Commissioner Nathan?
Yeah, my only point was, I mean, that mandate is already out, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing here is trying to address what's in the mandate. I don't think we should, you know, spend a whole lot of time or, you know, a lot of effort. We ought to get something that addresses it.
Commissioner Woods? Does town of Newington track how many electric vehicles are in town?
I've never seen tracking of that one. If we parse down, you can maybe find it in the registrations and taxation and further the assessor, but no, I don't think we've ever done a study or a look at exactly how many we have.
Do we know how many charging stations?
We do not. We do not.
Be nice to know that.
Yeah.
My question, Mr. Planner, is that how does the town of Newington handle the electric charging stations right now in the center of town? Do people go up there and put a card in and charge?
Yeah, as far as I know, yes, they
Okay,
were installed under a grant.
right.
It was supposed to be free for X amount of years. We did exceed that time frame, and we did just recently convert them over to, you know, to pay to charge them.
That's what the DOT is. I believe you go in there, you charge, and you use your charge card to. All right, so I personally like option two, but you know, I think maybe you should dress it up a little bit more and we'll come back. Mr. Was you great?
Yeah. Is there a charging station at the old Food Mart Plaza? So it's there.
So it is not active. It was on again, we'll at the next meeting, we'll see an application that comes in, but it is currently not active, not currently, because that's the thing is when you have it, it's not owned by the owner, it was a third party and they're no longer servicing it and you kind of, they sit there, it's, you know, that will be potentially a demand of, you know, the owner or the operator. When you have people come to your business and say, hey, I'd really love to charge, people will take note of that. But again, I think, again, to be compliant with the state statute, I do want to get this regulation on the books. Because right now we're in a kind of a gray area of me telling them they need to put 10% by state statute without it being in the zoning regulations and enforcing state statute within our planning process, which is not the clearest way that you want to do land use
I want to get
regulations.
explained up. Commissioner Pascarelli?
Yeah, I mean, the second option is fine with me. Fine.
Commissioner Nathis?
Yeah, I already said second.
Commissioner Fox? Commissioner Droz? Okay. Commissioner Minor?
Yes.
Okay. You have your mandate, Paul.
Yep, so I'll prepare that and I will look at ways to more carefully define electrical supply.
Okay.
So it's just clear, because I think that was the main comment, to make sure we make it clear to developers. And again, I'll add in, when we received a recent conversation with a developer, they already had, you know, we're like, okay, we're gonna put our 10% here, and they're like, where is it in your regulations? So we're like, well, we're working on that.
Oh, we got that done, Paul. Thank you. Petitions for a hearing, well,
Yep, so those are what we have. You want to share yours, but yeah, we have, again, the special permit for 175 Lowry Place for the trampoline park that will be at the next meeting. The public hearing notice will go in the paper next week. And then, so that's a special permit. They'll be in front of you. Again, it's not any major changes to the site. We've been talking with the owner and the operator and looking at cleaning up the site and doing some, repairs to the parking lot. So you'll see that as presented in front of you.
maybe they'll
We're still
turn on
getting.
maybe they'll turn on the electric charging stations.
You can
Sorry.
ask them.
They've started to clean the site already.
Yes.
Best has looked a long time.
Yep, we're working with them and they have, again, the prospective tenant, and it would be good to see more activity in the downtown.
Have you checked, I see the gate is open on the side there. Have you checked to make sure we don't have any dumping in the back?
I was just behind there today, actually.
It's
Yeah.
clear.
It is
The
clear.
funny thing, we didn't actually have some dumping, but when we were on site, we had someone who pulled up and who was taking cinder blocks away. From a pallet in the back who got caught doing that and he drove off.
I looked at the pallet, there's 4 blocks left on it today.
He
so-
came back and got the
He came
rest
back and got
almost.
some more.
Anywho, so, and then the next items for scheduling is for a place of worship at 7595 North Mountain Road, industrial zone. So we're looking at this property now. Depending on our review, or finishing a review tomorrow, it'll either be on the 14th or it'll be on the second meeting in August is our plan.
All right, thank you, Paul. We have the communications here from Prague. Okay. Second round, any public participation?
Yep, so we have, the only item I have, again, I'll just remind people, the current land use applications are on the planners page. We're gonna be working on, keeping those up to date and working with we're transitioning. I've been talking about this. Again, it's a more painful process than you like, transferring over to using your applications in the OpenGov software. There's always quirks and stuff like that, but we're transitioning to that. And my goal would be to have a link to the application. You can open it on OpenGov and you can see all the documents. So we don't have to keep posting and then you have ones that are out of date. I know that, that was discussions that people come up during different meetings of like, well, this one has this date. It's not the newest one. If we link it to the software, the newest one will be there. So that's the plan. So for the town planner update, I would just like to highlight Culver Street. So I was out there for the apartments, the development today, just to show you kind of what it looks like. Again, this is still rough grading has been done on site. This is entering the site, the big soil stockpile, topsoil is to the left. This is actually looking, this would be south. South, again, we're eventually behind on the next one, I believe I go further, but looking south, you can see the cleared area is cleared. It's pretty tight. The material on the site is pretty good. You can see, it's hard to see on there, but you can see the lows in the background as well. And this is kind of the grade of the site. What they're working on, this is from one angle, you can see all of the underground stormwater detention, the Coltech units. And the next picture I have is them installing the Coltech units in one of the first underground detention. There's more than one of them, I believe, on site.
I believe there's 2.
2 on site. And that's kind of what the activity is happening on site right now. Just to give you an idea, because I know it's interior, people can only see it from the road. But they did have a couple weeks where they went back to another project they were working on, but now that they're back on site and working again.
You want to comment on the units there?
I think is that the last photo?
Yes.
Yep, and so that's the last photo. Again, my goal is to always to keep you updated about sites. If you ever have questions about a site and would like to see progress on it, you can always ask me. I can go take pictures of it. That way, we're not encouraging people to go onto active construction sites. And that's what I have.
Okay, great. We have the CROG letters here. Any question on CROG letters?
No.
Okay. All right, going to public participation for the second round. We should come up and speak. Just state your name and address for the record.
No one online has their hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I know if Bob's coming up or not.
Yep.
Sorry about that, guys. Bob Tallard, 32 Edmund Street. Evening, Mr. Chairman. How you doing?
Good, so.
Good, thank you. I'll make this brief. I started investigating the Kennedy assassination the day it happened. And I know who did it, how many people and organizations and the power that was behind it. And through those 60 years, I've met some very famous people. Colonel Fletcher Prouty, who was was played by Donald Sutherland, who actually just passed away, Mysterious Mr. X. He had a lot to say. He worked in the Pentagon. So what I'm getting at, I'm sorry, I'm dragging this out, but I am very skeptical about corporations. I would trust my daughter going on a date with Charles Manson before I trust a corporation. That's just me because of what I've learned. And, but I'm looking at this. This is what I really wanted to get at, but I just wanted to give you a little basis of where I'm coming from. If somebody could answer a question for me, Paul or Chairman, if there's a, okay, there's a Citgo there, gas station near there up on the highway. We all know that where it is. If there's a 18-wheeler with gasoline in it, and it's going up East Cedar Street, and it hits this thing at 35 miles an hour. I was wondering if anybody can give me an idea of what could possibly happen. That's all I have to ask. Thank you. If I can get an answer, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Paul?
So I would say that would be normally beyond my level of expertise with its fire control and things like that. However, I think the commission's comments regarding bollards and protection will be taken into account by staff and by discussions with the fire marshal as well. Because yes, that was brought up with the concern of an 18-wheeler. Again, that is an unlikely scenario, again, with that happening in that case, but vehicular protection for any BES will be a consideration in the applications.
All right, thank you, Paul. I know we did have an 18-wheel accident up there. I can't remember. You remember it, Steve? We had a truck that did have an accident up there coming off, but, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Is that Chris?
Yeah, it was just the echo.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, he's just echoing.
Oh, okay.
Somebody online does have their hand raised. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Hello, nice to meet everybody. You're so cute. I want a baby hug. But I was thinking, my question is, what do you know about the AI technology services that input our nation and our capitalism?
We've been Zoom spammed.
Nice to meet you. I can kiss you guys.
I think you need to say it off.
Okay. Zoom is fun.
It's so beautiful, and
This is not going yet.
Okay.
I just said,
This is still not going.
I
Okay.
I remove.
Okay.
That's it?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, remarks by commissioners, Commissioner Droz.
Yeah, I just noticed in reading through the crop letter here, I just like the wording of what Vernon put in our having spoken the last several meetings over the last few months as far as stuff in center of town type of thing. Apartment complexes now going to be a trampoline park, that type of thing. Some of the discussion had been about parking by the street and how close were the buildings to be to the street. There was wording they put in this, which I thought is actually really cool. A more human scale streetscape. And I just thought it was really cool in regards to wording it that way. In this case, if they're talking about having the cars back from the street and where they're to be parked, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fine, that may not relate to us, but the concept of a human scale streetscape sounded really cool. Sorry, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Jost. Any other commissioner remarks?
Small.
Mr.
Let's
Chairman,
get instead of
Yes,
cars,
Mr. Woods.
size.
this was probably for you, Eric. Lowe's, they
walk
do a
outside.
decent
Cool.
job
Yes.
of maintaining their property, except for the part that faces Walmart. The grass is 3 feet high, there's dead trees and branches falling over the place. They used to maintain it, it hasn't been cut in 2 years. So it's their main entrance on the Denny Road?
The exit entrance,
Yeah,
right?
the exit entrance, yeah.
The exit
It's
entrance
bad.
makes sense.
Yeah,
And
it's a
litter,
jungle.
there's litter's more disgusting in the high grass. If we could do something about that, that would be great.
We'll take a look at it.
Lowe's.
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 Yeah.
Rear exit.
Yeah.
It actually has a line of sight issue in regards to what's coming up around the base of the tree. You can't see left.
Right. The rest of the property is maintained fine.
Any other remarks? Hearing none.
I'm
Like
done.
a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for attending.